Welcome to Lock It Down Sports. I'm your host, Locke Hoover, and as always, you can follow me on Twitter at Lock It Media. That's Lock It Media on Twitter. You can also check us out at E5280 Sports. That's E5280 Sports. And today on the show, what are the Braves really missing? Does this report need to be brought to other leagues? And this man continues to prove what he provides for the university. But first, I want to get into this, and that is the perks of playing in the Big 12. And you probably look at me in a crazy way, side eye, saying, the Big 12? What are the perks of playing in the Big 12? They're these third, maybe fourth of the Power Four conferences. You can make a debate between the ACC and the Big 12 jockeying for that third slot. But I think there are some perks of playing in this league, and here's why. I mean, I think they have a creative, forward-thinking commissioner, and he's doing everything he can and has currently done to strive, thrive, and bring in revenue in non-traditional ways to compete, because he has to continue to build his conference, get that money. Like I've talked about earlier, potentially willing to sell naming rights to a conference. So the Gatorade Big 12 conference, or the All-State Gatorade Big 12 conference, or, whatever corporate logo sponsor, enter name here, Big 12 there is. He's going to do that for more money. He's come out and said it at Media Days this week that is willing to play in Mexico, which I believe would be a first. I want to say, I could be wrong on this. I know other teams and universities have played out of the country, like Ireland. I know Notre Dame and both Georgia Tech have played in Ireland. But I want to say this is the first team to play in Mexico. Once again, more eyeballs, a different audience, could potentially bring fans to your conference, whether it's an Arizona State, teams on the border, someone like that, might get attracted to you. Or heck, it might be just whatever two teams go and play in Mexico. Be a big draw. And I think really the biggest perk is you get a free ticket to the college football playoff now that it's expanded to 12 teams. You have a chance to win a national championship because you're in the Big 12. Not necessarily because you're good or you're good enough to get in, but how the 12-team playoff is structured, you're getting a ticket. And that's a deal. That's a big deal. It's nice for that conference. I mean, and if I'm a Big 12 fan, that's got to excite me knowing this conference is wide open. It's a wide open conference. And we don't have to be the best in the regular season. We just got to get in. We don't have to go 12-1 or undefeated. There's wiggle room for us to get in because our conference is such a toss-up of who's going to be the leader, the flag bearer of that conference. I mean, there's no true face of this conference anymore, with both Texas and Oklahoma now in the SEC. I mean, it's a mixed bag of who the dominant team in the conference is. So since 2019, 7 teams have played for the conference championship. 7 teams since 2019. That tells you teams other than just Texas and Oklahoma have been in there. I mean, my mind, when I think about the Big 12 at this point, it's the first team that comes to mind that carry that Big 12 banner, that flagship, is Oklahoma State or Kansas State. I don't know why, but like to me, those are the two teams. When you say Big 12, Oklahoma State. But that's just, I don't know. And maybe for why I think of it, that team, specifically, I'd say Oklahoma State, is one, it's like they've always been good to solid. And that was, me even growing up and even now. Yeah, they've had some down years, but they've always been good to solid when it comes to Mike Gundy. He's a character. He can have some fun rants. Oklahoma State's going to make some noise. And then you've got a team we'll talk about a little bit later in Colorado. The hype's, the bubble's always there, even though they won 4 games last year. They've got 2 top picks, maybe 2 first-round picks, maybe first 2-round picks anyway at quarterback and receiver. So there's some hype there. And, of course, Deion within itself. But there's a path. There's an easy path. And every Saturday is going to be a big deal and a big fight because that's their spot, their chance to get into the playoffs. Now, yes, the Braves are playing well. They're playing good. I believe they're 8, 9, 10 games over 500. Second in division. What are they, 8.5 back? 8 games back behind Philly. So that's a decent chunk as we head towards the All-Star break. Not insurmountable at all. Leading the wild card right now. So they're in a good spot. They're playing good baseball. Not on fire baseball like all of last year. But when you watch this team, you can't quite place it. And, yeah, there's some injuries. Yeah, the Strider injury, obviously, the Ron Raccoon injury, obviously, some nicks in the bullpen, but the bullpen's mostly been strong. And you keep looking around left and right. There's been some struggles. Olsen's been kind of streaky up and down. Austin Riley just now getting back and starting to swing a little bit better. Ozzy's been up and down. Hasn't completely plummeted, but he hasn't skyrocketed and taken off either. Arcia, struggling mightily. Sean Murphy just now coming back, starting to get going. Travis Darno swinging it pretty well. So they take all of that into account. You see it. They're still, like I said, 10 games over 500. But what are they missing, right? And I mean, I think it's a certain attitude, a certain edge that they're missing. And maybe that's because Ron Washington and Eric Young are no longer there. I mean, those coaches would tell it like it is to those players in the clubhouse. And you would see it. The guys would respond. They would respond to whatever EY, Eric Young, and Ron Washington said. Their leadership of how they interact and worked with the ball club, I think has had an effect. Yeah, there's more. They do more than just their hitting drills with the guys, their fielding drills in the outfield, all their prep stuff. They provide them that little edge or that situation. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had that coach who you just respond to better. He might not be the head football coach or the head baseball coach or the head wrestling coach or softball coach or, whatever. But like that assistant coach, maybe that position coach or that coordinator that can connect with you on a different level. I think that's some of it what Ron Washington and Eric Young were able to do in Atlanta. And I mean, I feel like you see that on the field too. When Ronald Acuna was still playing, he got picked off back-to-back times in 2 days at first base. Like one time, okay, yeah, you got caught leaning. He likes to run all the time. Sure, I get it. But back-to-back in a span of, it's like, wait, what's going on? There's something that's not connecting there. Now, of course, I'm not saying Matt Tuiasosopo and Tom Goodwin are not good coaches, but they're just new to the team. Yes, Tuiasosopo, big leaguer, and he was in Gwinnett as a manager. But it's different. Goodwin, long-time big league coach with the Mets, with the Red Sox. He was the Braves roving instructor before he came on as a first base coach. And maybe it's these two coaches learning the players, seeing how they respond, different ways to communicate and interact with them. Yeah, I know it's the All-Star break, and they've already had spring training and all that, I understand. But there's still that learning curve of, in the heat of the moment, you're 2 for your last 30. You're grinding. You're trying to figure out, what's going on. You booted a few balls in the infield. Maybe they haven't figured out yet of how to respond to these players, how to give them that little edge that Washington and Young were able to. I mean, also too, obviously the players are the ones out there playing, and they don't need to be playing better. There's only so much Goodwin and Tuiasosopo can actually play and say, but I think there is something to that I feel like I've seen them being missed at different points in the season. And you know what? They still might be behind Philly, but you know what? It might be 3, 4, 5 games instead of 8.5 games. So hopefully the second half, they can start to play better, and they can get this edge, this attitude different, this edge that they need to bring for the second half, because we've seen Philly's playing a really good baseball, and they're not going to let up. Now, someone who has not let up, and I've talked about this a little bit earlier, and that's the form of Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner. And it's been reported that he offered Colorado $2.5 million to leave the Pac-12 to join the Big 12. Now, other 3 schools didn't receive anything to leave. And I think some of them leaving was, obviously seeing the dynamic of where the Pac-12 conference was going. And they need somewhere to go. And so the Big 12 said, come on, open arms. You're with us. Come on. And the funny thing about all this to me is Colorado wasn't even the biggest get. They weren't the best team to come over and join the conference. Not even in the closest margin at all. I mean, you could say they are the 3rd best team behind Utah, obviously, in Arizona. If you really want to look at it, it should have been the Utes that got the money, because they can actually bring something, and I think are the contenders and probably one of the favorites to win the conference. which will in turn bring money to the conference via the playoff. I mean, the Deion effect, it continues to amaze me, especially for a program that won 4 games last year. Your Mark doing a great job in the Big 12 conference to continue to create that buzz and get as many eyeballs on the conference and people to talk about the conference that aren't in Big 12 country. I think it was a smart move for him to do that. Does Colorado get that money without Deion? I think you know the answer. But because it's Deion, they get it, and you go, huh. You know, good for Colorado. Would it have been necessary? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't start off a chain of reactions if they aren't offered the money from the Big 12 with Colorado going to the conference. Maybe they don't leave the Pac-12 if they're not offered, hey, here's $2.5 million. Come on, guys. You were one of us before. You left. We had a divorce. And, you know, we're getting remarried. You're coming back home. Maybe it would have started regardless, but I think it's definitely an incentive for a program like Colorado who's will take any money it needs to and can, especially in this NIL era. So once again, a creative way, like I mentioned earlier, some creative ways for the Big 12 conference and what your Mark is doing as a commissioner. Now, I think you've seen this you've at least heard about it with the NFL and the report cards. You know, they do grades on every NFL team, such as treatment of families, food cafeteria and their food cafeteria, nutrition, how their locker room is, their training room and training staff, the weight room, the strength coach, team travel, head coach, and ownership. You know, players anonymously write surveys and, you know, turn them in and say, hey, here's what I think of my team XYZ. Now, I don't know this. I wonder if on that survey, they give opinions on visiting locker rooms. I don't know. But obviously they do it on their home team, their home locker rooms, you know, etc. But maybe the visiting side, that is a factor, such as, you know, pregame foods, locker room, training room, weight room, etc. I don't know. Maybe it is. But, you know, they only release them to the media, these player surveys for the NFL. And I think they have some overall effects on these teams that, crap, we need to improve on our rankings. Or maybe it's a certain category we need to improve on. And I mean, in fact, this could be true. The Arizona Cardinals went from 31st to 27th overall. Not a big jump, but there is a slight jump from 31 to 27. I think if other leagues put this into effect, I think it would impact clubs and players. I do. So in some instances, I don't think it would affect, say, ownership, because, you know, X team only has a certain amount of money to spend. Now, in some instances, I think it might continue if it's knowingly on blast of teams not spending money in free agency even to improve their team. I think some of this too is like players talk amongst each other and see and hear how other teams and players and clubs are treated, both on the home side and the away side, I believe. I've seen this, firsthand in Major League Baseball clubhouses, and you'll hear, and I've heard how players will talk about it of, oh yeah, this clubhouse we just got XYZ on the visiting side for food, or it wasn't very good. They only serve this, or whatever the case may be. You see it. You hear it absolutely. Them doing these sort of things of comparing, rating different clubhouses, etc. Now, I feel like the survey may help players who've only played for one team their entire career before they enter free agency. Because the thought could be, well, if the Braves do it like this, for an example, or the Mets or the Cubs or the Dodgers do it like this, or the Yankees, all teams in the league do that. They treat us this way. They handle situations this way. It's what they know. It's what they see. And they may not be as talkative as a player as some. And you see that too. You see some players more quiet than others. But that just comes with the nature of things. And when it comes to talking about comparing stadiums and all that and arenas, I think some of that is a little jaded, a little bit harder to compare. Of course, Wrigley and Fenway aren't going to be as nice as Truist Park or Arlington because they're newer stadiums. There's facts to that, Yeah, they try to make it as nice as they can, give it as much space as possible with renovations in Wrigley and Fenway. I always hear players talk about it. It's cool, they enjoy playing there, but just the fact that it's not super nice is everything's smaller. Everything just condensed. There's not much room, which it makes sense because of how long and how old that stadium is. That's just one of those. That's how it is, and that's what it's all about. I think another tricky part of this would be, and I don't, for as the NFL comes, how many correct answers do you really get when surveys are turning in about your players, about your training staff, about your training room, about your strength coach? You spend a lot of time with those guys, obviously, and that's tough. So would you get the same survey from NBA, Major League Baseball, soccer clubs as well? I don't know. Maybe you get truthful answers, but if you come back and you see everybody's an A+, it's like, something does not add up, and that's when it gives you an idea of, this isn't all quite there. So I think it'd be cool to see, especially as a fan. And I think it could help different situations and different players and clubs of, hey, here's what needs to be done. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at Lock It Up Media. That's Lock It Up Media on Twitter. I'm Locke Hoover. You've been listening to Lock It Down Sports. Talk to you next week.